Hello, hello, my fellow sensitive people. It is I, your favorite reader named Whimsy. Of all the readers named Whimsy, I am forever your favorite. Now, I received a complaint last month that somebody said that my opening introduction on this channel was highly unprofessional and that I should be serious all the time and deliver these readings with utmost seriousness. Well, this is Tarot with Whimsy, so we aren't gonna honor that request. We try to have a little bit of fun in the midst of the chaos. This is the way of the Oracle of Whimsy, and if you would like to play with the Oracle of Whimsy, sometimes you just have to have a sense of humor, particularly at this time in our nation's history. I just finished a meditation at my office. I really like meditating in my office because it's a very peaceful space. And I wanted to focus on what is going on with Iran and what is going on with the president in the United States and these concerns about going to war with Iran. The first perspective I tried to put myself in was the perspective of leadership in Iran. And I was very surprised by the feeling I had when I went into that energy. It was not what I expected. It was a feeling like the Iranian people don't want to go to war, and they don't want to send their own people out to die in a war. And as I was sitting in a position, as I imagined myself in the meditation, being a person in a position of power in the Iranian government, I kept feeling this collective grief of the nation over wars and the deaths of children in wars in the past, particularly the long war they had with Iraq, where they were sending young children, 14, 15 years old, to die when they were fighting in Iraq. So this was the first thing I felt when I went into the energy of how the Iranian people and leadership feel right now about threats from the United States and threats from Saudi Arabia. It's a feeling like we don't want to send our people to war. We don't want to send our children to war. So that would probably explain why Iran funds so many proxy wars. They give money to Hezbollah, they've given weapons and uniforms, etc. to Hamas. They have donated money to other armies, to proxy armies. And it makes sense when you look at it from the perspective of what it means to be Persian today, what it means to be living in Iran today, because the feeling is we don't want to have another bloody revolution. We don't want to have our children dying when they're children in war. So this feels, when I'm in the energy, like the nation of Iran is very cognizant of the cost of war because of what happened when they had this long war with Iraq, and it's one of the reasons why they will support other people's revolutions. They'll support other people's attempts at revolution, like funding Palestinian military, etc. But they themselves don't want to fight. They themselves don't want to go into the conflict and put their children at risk or bury their dead. So it feels to me like the whole entire nation went through a very brutal period in the 70s, 80s, to some extent the 90s, and now they just want to make sure that doesn't happen again. That's the feeling within Iran, and there's also a feeling of kind of shock that the balance of power is changing, that Iran had its trade deals with oil and certain countries, and OPEC had its arrangement with its oil deals with the United States, and this is definitely oil related. But there's a kind of shock from Iran because they thought that this was all agreed upon and that everybody was going to be able to just continue selling to who they wanted to sell to. That it's almost like a surprise that the rules changed. That's how it feels when I go into the energy on Iran. When I go into the energy of Donald Trump, Mr. Trump, it's this feeling like, I always feel like I'm an entertainer, like I'm supposed to talk a certain way, walk a certain way, act a certain way, and I've been hired as an entertainer to put on a character, and the character is supposed to do certain things. And I feel when I'm in this energy like I received money and I made a bunch of promises to Saudi Arabia, and I made a bunch of promises to these various different Gulf countries that I would make business with them. But the promise or the tough talk that I'm now going to go to war with Iran because Saudi Arabia has been at war with Persia, the Shia and the Sunni have been at war for 1,000 years, more than 1,000 years. That is kind of more than what Trump and his character bargained for. The persona of Trump that was hired to play this character, basically it's like the GOP hired this actor, this reality TV actor, to go out and play this character. And as long as he's making money, as long as everybody's making money, he'll continue to play the character. But then it got to the point where the Saudis are really serious. They really want to go to war with Iran, and they want to use the American military to do it. So this is where I feel the timidness coming from Trump. Like, well, I didn't think you were serious. I mean, I thought you just wanted me to talk tough for the money you sent and all the money you've spent staying at my hotels and all the business arrangements. In exchange for that, I would just talk tough and say, yeah, Saudi's great. They're now demanding more from this administration, the Saudis, Israelis, and everyone who he's been compromised by Middle Eastern countries that have it out against Iran, and he's trying to figure out how he can get out of it. I don't really think I want to do this, but there's all these business arrangements and all this compromise that he has with these countries. Then I go in the meditation, I go into what's happening from the nationalist perspective, from the French perspective. And the feeling is that when you go into France's perspective, that it's really France's business who she chooses to do business with, and that the nationalists don't like this idea that the EU is going to decide, no, NATO said you can't do business with Russia, this type of business with Russia, and NATO is going to put sanctions on Russia, or there's going to be tension between NATO and Russia. NATO is now taking a hard line against Iran. So the response I feel when I go into the nationalist energy, particularly around France, is this is precisely what we don't want. This is precisely why we want to end relationship with the EU, because we feel that our priority is not the EU. Our priority is the well-being of France and what is best for France. And we feel that some of these contracts would be good for France. Some of these contracts, some of this business. France has a long history of trade and cultural exchange with Russia. It goes back a long way. Whether it's exchanging arts like the ballet, or just in terms of basic trade. But there's a history there between France and Russia. It's a complicated history, and that is part of why the French nationalists are moving away from the EU. It's like these old relationships and the dynamics of these old relationships can't go forward the way that they have in the past because of these new contracts with the EU. So that was the feeling I got as I went into the energy over Europe, and specifically the nationalist response to what's happening with Iran and with Russia, which is an ally of Iran and an arms dealer for supplying to Iran. I'm going to go now and throw the cards. I'm sorry about the angle. You might not be able to see the cards, but I'll show them to you. This is my senior deck. And people had asked about the senior deck. This is what I store my senior deck in. It smells so nice. I think that this is sage. I bought this at a shaman made this. And then you can wrap it in silk or just keep it in the box, and that's how I This is where I've always kept my senior deck. Remember, the longer you work with a deck, the longer you have a relationship with the deck, the easier it's going to be to read. And yeah, so that's as we work with magic, the magic gets stronger. The older it is, the better. I like my senior deck to be all straight up. Inversions are fine. You know, I read inversions no problem, but for whatever reason, because it's my senior deck, I just like it all straight up. All right, so I want to do a quick throw. Let's see if there's going to be a war with Iran. Because the remote was quite unpleasant. And I'd be interested in seeing what Congress, if the GOP wants to go to a war with Iran, or if that's the final straw. Where we're at right now, Ace of Wands coming in. This is an entrepreneurship card. It's also a card that denotes success in one's business. It's also a 1 month card if you're reading your wands as months, which I do. But the Four of Swords is moving in, which is to stop something or to be as still as death, samadhi, to be in deep meditation. In plainer words, there's a feeling like now is the time to do nothing. Four of Swords is a time of where what you are doing is you're in contemplation. So it's not an act of war or aggression. It's an act of being still and contemplative. The fact that it's associated with Ace of Wands would suggest that people need to cool down and calm down rather than acting. Where we're at right now, negotiations and conversations. Trump wants to get out of this and he wants to open up international conversation. It would appear, going into the energy, that this could turn into a stage for international dialogue. Yeah. Four of Wands moving in, a new partnership, possibly by August. So by August, we're going to be seeing a lot of international conferences happening where different countries are getting together and having real conversations about real problems because people don't want to go to war. What is above us? The military. The King of Swords is moving in. What sits below us? Hanged Man. Action, reaction, hanged man. The military. Hanging up the military. There's the deployment. We have a Knight of Wands coming in. So it almost feels like this is a threat, and the threat is there until we can stronghold the people to negotiate with us and give us the deal that we want. So that's what it feels like. You're going to give us what we want, Iran, and we're going to dominate you until we get it. And that's why we have a nice Magician card moving in with the King of Swords. So this is the bully or the strong person, the military, who comes in and says, give us what we want or there's going to be consequences. Where we're at right now, old loves returning. So this could be a feeling of renegotiating old contracts. This could be the Iran deal. It's going to be revisited and possibly revamped. What is around us? The King of Cups mediators moving in. This is exactly what I saw with North Korea, the mediator. Remember, the King of Cups is the King of Hearts, and he's the great mediator. The hope and the fear that people won't listen, that there will be no resolution between the parties. And then the final outcome. They will come to an agreement that's mutually beneficial, and it has to do with profits and money. Let's do a clarification. The strengthening the previous deal, strengthening the previous contract. So this is about wanting to strengthen the Iran deal. Trump does not want to go to war. He fears war. There's a part of him that's like a little kid in the sense that I wasn't serious. I don't want to be in a... It's the bully who doesn't want to fight. Lover's card over the King of Cups. Hopes and fears, deals, contracts, the Queen of Cups. And the final outcome, the law comes in. So things could change. Things always change. But now going into the energy regarding whether or not we're going to be at war with Iran, it feels to me like this was a warning cry with the military and Iran having this type of conflict between them. And this is going to jumpstart very, very quickly some type of international meetings between NATO and various different persons to discuss a new resolution that is acceptable to all the parties involved. It's a large conference to prevent war. That's what's coming up. With the time left over, I want to look a little bit at North Korea and see if because North Korea was interesting in the sense that I saw the same thing, mediation with them, and then what happened was they had the conference in Vietnam. I want to see if there's any future negotiations between Kim Jong-un and Donald Trump. Let's see what's going to happen. Kim Jong-un and Donald Trump. Conversations regarding, you guessed it, money and the King of Pentacles. It's interesting. The energy is really interesting with Kim Jong-un. It's as if he wants to be able to trust America and the United States because his country desperately needs money. His country needs money. They need business. They need infrastructure. And with a King of Pentacles moving in, it's almost like Kim Jong-un doesn't have a clue how to do this stuff. He doesn't have the knowledge. It's almost like he's been kept without basic information, but just a lot of fear, and it's kept him and his country impoverished. Fear often will lead to poverty because people are afraid to do anything. But as much as we may criticize the dynamics between Trump and Kim Jong-un, something good came of that in the sense that by meeting with the Americans and by presenting an American that is so good at being charming and getting people to like him, which is how Trump is, it actually did soften North Korea in a way. In a way, it was something very positive in the sense that he began to sell the dream to Kim Jong-un, and that's what I see here. Kim Jong-un revamped as the successful businessman. He wants to be Donald Trump. He wants Donald Trump to teach him how to do these things. Ten of Pentacles. It's as if it's his inheritance to be the successful businessman. So he sees Trump, come back, show me how you did what you did. I want to do what you did. I want North Korea to be successful. Ten of Swords right over them. So feeling like the poverty of North Korea, the hell that is life in North Korea, is something that they desperately want to be rescued from, but they need help. And then what is entering? It's entering a time of the Empress. So that's fertility and abundance. This looks like a more open relationship or dialogue between South Korea and North Korea. And if anyone's going to help them get on their feet, it's going to be South Korea. You can see this nice Empress moving in, which is about fertility, abundance, harvesting the wheat, harvesting the grain. Previous offers had been rejected. You can see the Four of Cups in the fourth house. And then what they sit in, again, how they harvest their money. It's all about whether or not they can evolve to be a country that can feed its citizens. Because right now, when I go into the energy, and something I've seen repeatedly with North Korea, they can't feed their people. There isn't enough food to feed the population. And they're not able to feed and get their people on their feet so long as trade is limited and they have a limited relationship with the West. The offers that have been rejected lead to the Devil card moving in, a feeling of being trapped by one's relationships. I also feel like, to some extent, the thumb of China is on top of them, in the sense that they feel somewhat restricted by China. That they've become a welfare recipient of China, right? A welfare recipient of Russia, in the sense that they get aid, but they get barely enough to survive, and being in a position of being a recipient of China and Russia makes them forever poor and helpless. And that's the dynamic that Kim Jong-un wants to free his country from. But he's an unbelievably fear-driven individual, to the point of paranoia. It's almost like a type of agoraphobia. The fear, shame, it's almost like a feeling of shame that he has, that the door will be open and everybody will see the dirty laundry, and everybody will see all the problems that North Korea has, and it's a source of embarrassment. But the fear of the opening of the eyes, that people will see that if they open North Korea, people will judge them harshly. This is why it has to be done in a very delicate way, with South Korea coming in, compassionately helping them get themselves up to snuff in terms of being on their feet. And the outcome is probably, first and foremost, a open dialogue with South Korea. The shared ethos, right? In the United States, if you're looking at the shared ethos of the country, the Constitution is the Hierophant, that's the shared ethos. Here, the shared ethos, I think, is the commonality between North and South Korea and their history, and the fact that it used to be a single country. And the final outcome: a slow, steady returning of dialogue and a return of normalcy. It's almost like a return of cultural exchange and assistance between North Korea and South Korea, a strengthening of that relationship. And in a way, despite the fact that Trump kind of came in and people thought it was kind of silly, in a way, I think they're almost nostalgic about it, the South Koreans, in a sense of like, well, maybe the buffoon needed to show up in order to break the ice a little bit so that we could go in and help North Korea and hopefully create lasting peace. So that's the dynamic. And ultimately, I think the peacemaker is going to be South Korea and China. And I don't know if the United States is going to be a big partner in this. All right. That was really fun. Thanks for watching, everybody. I'll see you next time if you're trying to get in for a reading. I don't know if I have any openings tomorrow. You can check, but definitely I do next week. All right. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.